The population bust in America is coming sooner than anyone has prepared for. Back in 1775, a Harvard professor named Edward Wigglesworth calculated that the colonies were doubling every 25 years, and he projected a grand total of 1,280 million by the end of the 20th century. A billion Americans, and then some. Today we're near 340 million, a sharp undershoot of his rosy math, and now the real concern is whether that undershoot is just the start of a decline rather than an end to growth. Why does a shrinking population matter? The social safety net, our tax base, innovation and entrepreneurship all depend on a steady influx of people. When the numbers start falling, entitlement programs get hit, the economy slows, and the workforce becomes scarcer, threatening everything from tech startups to the healthcare system. Big institutions, the Census Bureau, the United Nations, and even Social Security trustees, argue that America's population will probably wobble but only dip in the 80s or even after the 21st century. Their forecasts essentially assume that the economy will keep pulling people in, that birth rates will hold steady, and that immigration will supply the shortfalls. But that optimism doesn't line up with reality. A recent report from the Institute for Family Studies, where Dr. Lyman Stone directs the Pronatalism Initiative, projects that the United States will actually begin to shrink in the 2050s. That means most of theoretically predicted growth would stop in the 2030s, and by the 2050s we would finally be in a population decline. It is a very bleak picture that could overturn even the most conservative budgeting and political strategy. The core data behind this are stark. The American fertility rate has dropped below 1.6 children per woman, the lowest it has ever been. The replacement rate, the number of children needed to keep a population steady in the absence of immigration, sits roughly around 2.1. If the downward trend in births continues, the number of people might plateau by the early 2030s, and then begin a slow retreat a few decades later. A big part of why the optimistic forecasts get it wrong is the assumption about migration. The Census Bureau projects a net migration of roughly 1 million people per year until the end of the century. The UN and Social Security trustees plan for about 1.2 million a year throughout the 21st century. Those numbers look good on paper, but under President Trump's administration we saw net migration barely move. And he's not the last of the immigration restrictive leaders to hold office. Even outside the United States, birth rates are collapsing. Young people are disappearing from economies that once fed immigration flows, narrowing the pool of skilled migrants that nations otherwise crave. As the population proofs Negro, the supply of willing and able migrants will shrink in tandem. In short, America's peak might arrive before millennials even get to meet their grandchildren. Some still imagine a vibrant, expanding United States, but the evidence says the picture is changing. The next decade will see the end of growth and the dawn of a decline that will test the very foundations of policymaking, budgeting, and ultimately, our collective future. Until we have a realistic conversation about this, we'll keep chasing a growth model. Great, thank you for listening. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time.